There doesn't seem to be an end at the moment to the bad news for consumers. Fuel and food prices are going in the wrong direction as the cost of living continues to bite.
And with several tax rises due to hit next month, is it time for the government to do more to help? Financial expert and founder of the business networking service Regionally, Justin Urquhart Stewart, is with us. Justin, it's a perfect storm for consumers at the moment, isn't it?
It is. It's an old phrase, but this time it's absolutely right. You know, we all had to go through a pandemic and all of that, so we're sort of familiar there. We knew there were inflationary pressures. But then add to that, then the issues we've had to do with commodities. Just before the war hasn't even started yet. So you've got the issue over bad wheat harvests in Ukraine and Russia and America and Canada. And that's down to the weather, global warming. Take a choice. Either way, the amount is much, much lower. Therefore, price is already rising. Now, just add to that the horrors of this war as well. And of course, Ukraine is not going to be producing much in the way of wheat. Even if it does, it's about to lose its ports, it would seem, to actually export it anywhere. And this isn't just a European issue. They export to all over the world, and particularly to parts of Africa, which are dependent upon it. Therefore, you're going to see the threat of food shortages, and with food shortages, political instability, and people being worried about famine. And so, you can get awfully carried away with this. But it's a combination of elements. And for us in the UK, really what this means is it's not inflation now, it's inflation later in the year and next year because of this feeding through the system. And so that's higher levels of inflation. We're already looking at 7 to 8%. And we come from this generation hasn't seen higher inflation. Go back to the 70s. There was one year where we hit, for a very short period of time, 25%. And that's devastating for people who are at the wrong end of the income scale, the very poorest, because particularly with things like wheat, whether it's your pasta or bread and things like basic elements going up a lot. They're not going up by 5-6%. They're going up by 10, 20. One pasta I saw in a year was up by just about 80%. Okay, so it's pence, but nonetheless, it's still a high percentage. And of course, those who are retired possibly are living on an annuity. Maybe it's a fixed annuity and maybe not linked to inflation. And so that's the real pain. So it now takes, I'm afraid, it's not just a matter of saying, we can adjust something. No, we need some radical thinking here, just as we were dealing with the pandemic. And does that mean you're going to have to dip your hand in your pockets again to say, for the next year or so, whilst we go through this peak, do you have some form of pension furlough or something like that? I'm making that up as I go along. But, to try and actually help people through it, because this is going to be extremely painful for a group of people.
So we're talking about stagflation, the possibility of stagflation, where we have no growth in the economy, but inflation's ripping. I just wondered, obviously the Bank of England's job is to try and control inflation. The tool that they usually use is to put up interest rates to bring down inflation. Presumably in a period of stagflation where there's no growth and people are really struggling, putting up interest rates presumably would make the problem worse rather than better, because it would mean there'd be people that have even less money to spend.
It doesn't help because, interest rates were still close to zero anyway, because we were still on emergency rates from the banking crisis. And so all central banks wanted to put rates up, if only to allow them to cut them again when things start slowing down. And we're beginning to see that signs in America. We saw that V-shaped recovery beginning to roll over again. So there's relatively little that central banks can actually do with that. Now, the good news is, and I know Prime Minister...
We need some of that, don't we?
Well, there is Prime Minister May said there wasn't a money tree. Actually, well, there is a money tree, but of course it's producing, I say fake money, it's producing quantitative easing money. It's producing debt, which of course actually goes into our government, on our national debt position. And you could do that for a while, but only for a while. Otherwise, eventually investors will turn around and say the emperor is somewhat sartorially challenged. We don't believe Britain can pay its way. So there is some flexibility there. But there's no magic issue to make this go away, I'm afraid. Stagflation, again, it's a creature of the 70s. It's very different from the 70s. You had a more unionised workforce who were much stronger. Now they don't have that sort of strength anymore. But nonetheless, people need to have more pay. But even the pay rises at 5%, if they're lucky, with inflation at 7 or 8%, you're still worse off.
And obviously it's the spring statement shortly. Rishi will be literally racking his brains as to what to do. He'll have said in 3 months we've gone from one massive crisis to another one. What are the tools at his disposal? People like me and Phil will be saying, what are you doing increasing national insurance contributions? What can you do about taxation? They've gone down the path of a benefits, but we'd be saying get rid of tax. What would you be saying for the best way to tackle what we could be in stagflation?
Yeah, well, now it's time not to be increasing taxation. Now it's time actually you want to be able to encourage the economy to grow. How do you get more tax? More taxation? No, no. Grow the economy. No, the economy gets bigger, you earn more money out of it. It's a simple way of trying to do it. The good news with this, again, is we are remarkably entrepreneurial. We set up a lot of new businesses in this country. We have a lot of good growth businesses. We're absolutely useless at funding most of them, particularly outside London. So one of the issues I've been banging on about is not that you want regional stock exchanges again, but regional investment hubs so people can invest in regional businesses. Because if you just think it's anywhere between 500,000 and, say, 15, 20 million, where do you go to? The City of London can't help. You're too big to be small, too small to be big. Angels and things like that could help for a few 100,000, but you need some initiative. So why not, in the regions, actually have, in Liverpool and Manchester, speak to each other, you'll know more about than I, to actually create then regional investment hubs so that you can actually direct local money into those businesses rather than waiting for central government to do it, because they won't.
And today we've been talking about energy under our feet. Shale, why don't we do that? That would be a brand new industry in our regions that, would reduce energy prices, and if it doesn't, at least starts up an industry giving jobs and tax to the exchequer. What do you think? Would that be a way forward?
I mean, the issue of shale was extremely controversial. People talking about earthquakes and things of such a minute level. I'm not an expert enough, but I would certainly be saying, look at this closer. Really tell me, at a time when we need more energy in the short term, is this going to be viable for us to do so? Or at least then see, is this something we should be investing in, or encouraging other people to come and invest in it? America has, whether you agree with it or not, found itself in the position of being the largest producer. Why? Because they went fracking mad. So they did reduce it a bit. I'm not suggesting we necessarily do the same, but there are opportunities there. The other thing is hope for some more wind. We're quite good at that.
Justin, thank you very much indeed for being with us again today.